Let's start with a Friday game. Normally we don't do this, but it's championship week, and we're going to walk you through the weekend in chronological order.
Yeah.
It seems like a logical thing to do. This one's being played Friday night, 8 p.m. on ABC. Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. You ever been?
I have not. I've been to Las Vegas. I've never been to this stadium.
Your Oregon Ducks at 11-1, minus 9.5, squaring off against the Washington Huskies. That one loss for the Oregon Ducks came way back when against the Washington Huskies, 36-33 back on October the 14th. It was a great game, one of the best we've seen all season. The key moment in that game was Oregon taking a risk. Riverboat gambler Dan Lanning decides he's going for it on fourth down about midfield to try and ice the game. They did not get it. They gave the ball back to Michael Penix Jr. Washington scored in 2 plays. Even still, Oregon got the ball back. They went 50 yards. They missed a 43-yarder at the gun. And I think that is an appropriate backdrop for what might be the best game of the weekend. We can debate the merits of that.
Sure.
But since then, Oregon's been murdering teams. They've been licking their chops for another crack at Washington. Washington's been winning, but not separating. It's been like 8 straight wins, or I don't have the exact number, but a bunch of wins in a row, all less than 10 points. Where are you at with this game, Oregon alumni Dan Rubenstein?
All right, so I'll echo what you like to say off the air, right? That you need that sweet, sweet D. And that's defense, that's depth, and that's Dan Lanning, okay?
Okay.
And maybe it's a double D situation, right? It's Dan Lanning versus DeBoer, Dan versus DeBoer. I think Oregon wins comfortably in this game. And if you're a Washington person, if you're a neutral person, and you say to yourself, well, Dan has a rooting interest in Oregon, he's just being a homer here. I hate picking Oregon comfortably. I've been hating picking Oregon comfortably for 15 years. It scares me to do so, but I think I'd be doing, hey, here's another sweet D, Ty, a disservice to our listeners if I were to sit here and tell you it's going to be close or I think Washington has the edge. My feeling is because of the Oregon defense, because of the depth they've built up, they were not playing with a key linebacker who has been a big deal for this defense, Justin Jacobs, in that first matchup against Washington. Sure. And when I look at this Washington team, I don't see the depth. I don't see the defense consistently. Now, they play opportunistic defense. They've played fourth quarters relatively well. We saw the big turnover last week in the second half. Like, they come up with they're playmakers on this defense. I think the pass rush has come alive relatively recently. But when I look at the difference in this game, Michael Penix has not been playing super well. And you can say, well, the weather was really bad in Corvallis. Weather was fine last week against Wazoo. And something has happened to this Washington offense, whether it's injury, whether it's defenses figuring out new tactics, whether it's in the pass rush, whether it's keeping safeties back and making Washington nickel and dime them a little bit more. They look a little bit shook on offense in the way they didn't look in that first half of the season, whereas I think Oregon has only gotten stronger on offense. Now, you brought up the riverboat gambler thing on Oregon's offense, and when you go back to last year's Washington game, the Oregon State game last year, and then Washington games this year, they were especially bad in the red zone, not taking the field goal before the half, and certainly those high leverage fourth down moments, the big one midfield late. How'd it work against Oregon State last week?
Yeah.
Worked pretty well. They didn't even find themselves in really too many high leverage, third, fourth downs. So I think they're going to be in a great place here. And when a team gets stronger over the course of the season, I can't help but to favor them in a rematch. And to me, the numbers, the eye test, whatever you want to say, I've got Oregon by like 15 or 16 points here.
Whoa.
Like, I think they come
Them's fighting words,
Ty, you
dude.
know what today is. You know what this weekend is. It's not Friday, but I still think it's part of Stefani Saturday.
You and me.
So, I don't know if we're aligned, you and me, but I think they're going to get after Michael Penix. He looks like a different guy. Rome Odunze might be the single best offensive player in this game in terms of how dangerous he is, maybe outside of Bo Nix and Rome Odunze. And that's a big deal. But I don't think you can back shoulder throw your way to beating this Oregon team. I think there's too many guys, even with an injury at corner, a key injury at corner to Jaleel Florence, his status is unknown, and they were able to take advantage of some corner injuries the last time they played in the second half. I think there are too many ways for Oregon to win. I think this is an LRO, luck running out situation for Washington. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but these are the indicators for me. that I think the pass rush is going to be there, that I think Oregon has too many advantages at too many positions. They're too deep, and I think they're playing at such a high level right now. This team is playing with an electricity. Washington is just getting by Arizona State, just getting by Wazoo, just getting by, whoever in the back half of this season. Oregon State, after Oregon just beat them by 24, and it could have been by 34. I don't know. I'm not there.
Let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
You do remember that this Washington team beat Oregon,
I do.
right? You do remember that.
I do.
All the way back middle of October. That still happened, yeah? Because the way you're talking, it's like, poof,
did Oregon
gone.
have opportunities to win that game? Or was it like a clean, comfortable win for Washington at Washington? Is this game at Washington?
Game was at Washington. It was never going to be a comfortable.
Are seasons living, breathing things?
They're living, breathing things.
Did Alabama beat Georgia in the SEC championship and then lose to them promptly thereafter in the national championship? Like, come on, Ty. We've been following the sport for a long time.
Look, I've been pretty clear over the last month. I really like Oregon too.
Okay.
And one reason why is, I don't know, we can't really quantify it. Killer instinct. I always talk about killer instinct here.
Yeah.
You kind of have to watch the games. It's a vibes thing, killer instinct. But you can double check the vibes, at least to some extent, if you look at something like post-game win expectancy.
Sure.
All right. Basically, you take all the nerd stuff, the success rates, the big plays, field position, turnovers. You run them through a computer and you see how many times out of 100 you would still win the game. That's what post-game win expectancy is. Oregon's hit 100% 9 times this season. The only games they didn't were Texas Tech, obviously Washington, and USC, and USC was like 96%. This isn't even looking at the score. Again, this is all the underlying nerd stuff.
Right.
It tells you they're killing teams. They are killing teams this season. There are other stats like adjusted scoring margins and stuff like that that make it seem like Oregon is actually still leaving a lot of meat on the bone. And so to your point, they're good. They've been getting better. And I agree. Momentum this time of year is definitely something that you want if you're going to pick a big game like this. Interestingly, on the Washington side of things, Washington has not hit 100% in that post-game expectancy number since back in week 4.
Right.
So per the computers, they won a coin flip against USC, Utah, and Oregon State. It's just very much a trend. It does not mean that Washington is a fraud.
No, Washington went 12-0. No team had ever gone undefeated throughout the Pac-12 schedule until this year's Washington team. They're very good. It
does not mean that they are a fraud. It does not mean that they are not good. It just means that they have left some room for doubt, and I think that's what we're both speaking to here.
Yeah.
Notably, Washington outplayed Oregon. They beat them the first time around. Rerun that game through the computer, and Washington wins 78% of the time.
I totally agree. And this is still a matchup sport, right? That maybe there were bad matchups there for Washington thereafter, but Oregon, the common opponents, Oregon beat by 27 and Washington beat by 9.
I think Oregon had a great game plan last time around. They ran for over 200 yards. They controlled 10 more minutes of clock. They gained 541 yards. They were 10 of 16 on third downs, which is all that stuff's incredible.
Yeah.
Washington didn't really stop their offense. With the exception of that big fourth down play with 2 minutes, 11 seconds left on the clock, they didn't stop Oregon. I ran this game through my computer for whatever that's worth.
Okay.
I came out with 40. Thank you. 41-31 Oregon.
Yeah.
Is what I came out with. That tracks with the point spread. That tracks with the total, which is, when I jotted this down, 66.5. I don't know if it's moved, but it's in the neighborhood. It does not track with the fact, though, that Oregon also had trouble stopping Washington in that first game.
Totally.
As indicated by 36-33, the final score. And it doesn't track with everything that we know and love about Michael Penix Jr. He might be hurt. He might be a little bit off rhythm. He might be going through some stuff as evidenced by the end of that game a week ago where he just had his head in the tent or the towel.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. It's a long season. He's not going to sleepwalk into this game. This is the biggest game of his career. He's also going up against the Oregon secondary that, as you said before, has been banged up. So this is all a very long way of saying
they've got a safety wearing a catcher's mitt for a pad. Yeah.
I think this game's a lot like the first one. I think it's a back and forth offensive battle with a few key moments and decisions that decide the difference. Computer says Oregon by 10. My brain says Oregon wins 38-31 and Washington covers.
I have 38-21. Washington scored how many points? They scored 24. They needed the entirety of the four quarters against against Washington State. Scored 24, 22 against Oregon. It's like they just offense isn't there like it's been.
It isn't. No, I can relate to that point. And the good news, I think for me, is that after a long year of bad picks, this is one of those heads I win, tails you lose situation because my computer says Oregon covers and my brain says Washington covers. Either way, can't lose.
So the other thing concern-wise for Oregon, if I'm trying to be as three-dimensional as possible, Oregon's kicking game is in a down place right now. So I don't know if that's a concern as much as expect a lot of fourth down attempts. Even if it's 4th and 6 from like the 38, something like that. In field goal, that's not technically field goal range for anybody other than I guess Harrison Mevis, but like if there is that like they should probably kick it here moment like there was last time, I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
Now, if it's coming after a turnover right before the half and you it's a clock thing, maybe. I think probably Dan Lanning is correcting those mistakes. But I don't know if there's a ton of faith in the kicking game right now after some recent struggles. And so I think everything's going to be thrown at the wall here for Oregon in those, 4th and goals, 3rd and goals, 4th and 1s, 4th and 3s. Like, I really do think once again, it's not learning from your mistakes as in punt it or kick the field goal. It's in come up with better plays and execute them better.